Parish Orphans and Retrogrades, greetings after 10 days. This is, you might notice, the longest, I think it is but the longest single span of time that I've ever gone since having this channel and making videos on this channel without making a video. Now, I've done a talk in New Orleans in that time. I hope you're well as we prepare to go into Holy Week next week. Let us all remain penitent. So I gave a talk in New Orleans. I have done pretty much only that, aside from dealing with this scrum and this mess regarding the publication of Ask Your Husband, which, as you will remember, was creating big waves. Is going to continue creating big waves. And one of the waves that I warned you about is this thing is going to it's going to be embattled. And Steph and I have been embattled. Steph is 8 months pregnant, couldn't even appear on the video today. She's sitting right next to me. Where is the Ask Your Husband book? It is not at the moment available for sale. As I promised last week around this time, maybe it was Thursday, the book will be available for sale again in one form or another within a matter of short weeks. But I owe to you guys an explanation. Where is Ask Your Husband and what is the full story behind it? It's not one I've been looking forward to telling, but it's absolutely necessary, and it is, as a matter of fact, it's a matter of public consumption, though it involves a bunch of private facts. Now, I'm going to read a couple things to you, and what a mess. But when you look, Steph touched the third rail with this book, and all kinds of totally unexpected madness comes at you when you touch the third rail. And some of it's related, some of it's not related, some of it's, what a headache. Pray for Steph. Poor little Steffi sitting here next to me, who wrote this book that has touched so many of you. We've received dozens, it feels like hundreds, of emails from the thousands of you that read this book and said, this made an immediate difference in my life. It was all to the good. I immediately started making changes, so many of these women are saying, with my husbands, with my kids, and with my husband, with my kid. That wouldn't be good to have multiple. And it's always, in each one of these emails that we've received, it's been a net good. So thank you all for reading those. That's why we're going to continue to publish the book. But let me explain what exactly happened. Okay, so on March the 17th, 2021, about a year and almost a month ago, almost 13 months ago, I did a Rules for Retrogrades video that was similar theme, similar tone. The video was called, Where is the Feminism Book? The feminism book being referenced at that time was a book co-authored by my brother David and myself called No Christian Feminism. As bold, as important as Steph's book, but for males. And this was a book that Dave and I had begun co-authoring before a few months before Steph got her contract. Maybe a year before. But there was a period of time, I'm going to reference this all in specific, when all three of us were writing 2 books, and in the writing and editing process somewhere. This is what I said to you on March the 17th, 2021, after my brother David had been released by Sophia, who had some issues with him. And I told you at the time, look, Dave's a good guy. He attacked Charlie McKinney of Sophia, who's a very good man, Charlie, on Church Militant's pages and on one of their live streams, their news live streams. And he had to apologize for that. And so I was like, I'm at the helm of this, but Dave's good, Church Militant is good, and Sophia is good. This is what I said then. I was like, where is the feminism book? This. The actual priesthood must be all male. And feminism attacked both. So to attack feminism is to defend the patriarchy. And that's a tremendously controversial topic on its own. And over the last 15 months, I would trace the beginnings of the postponement of the publication date of this, as many people know, was supposed to come out in 2020. I traced the beginning to about 15 months ago in December of 2019. We sat out all of 2020 on the feminism book, which turned out to not be a bad thing because of the beer bug and all that ridiculous nonsense, which would have hindered sales and would not have helped us to promote the book. I just want to point out, so see, I'm going to explain why this book was sidelined. No fault to Sophia Institute Press or myself. For a year, and note how I positioned it there. I'm like, look, I told you the truth about what it was, but I'm like, hey, I don't want this. This is private. This is all private. This is so embarrassing. It was sidelined during COVID. Book sales during COVID were historically low, according to something someone told me recently, and had told me before I did this stream. So I was like, okay, so it wasn't a bad thing. The book was sidelined for about a year. Here's the dealio. So this is what I say as I go on. So 2020 is a wash for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons, but the foremost is COVID. Well, in December of 2019, as is referenced in a recent Church Militant article, which you might have read or heard about. It's one Dave wrote. Dave, co-author on the original book, had a tweet that Sophia was concerned about. And they were very, very fair. They were excessively fair. A lot of other publishers would have dropped us then and there. They said, because of this, it's a very unpopular tweet that is relevant to your book. We worry that this does authorial discreditation, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not really weighing in on this. I'm just reporting the facts. We're going to kick the publication date back to either late 2020 or 2021. A lot of less gritty, less. If you can always. Okay, that's good enough. I was just praising Charlie McKinney there, president of Sophia. I was going to say a lot of gritty, less Chad, young executives at publishers would have dropped a book for far less than Dave's late 2019 tweet, which got very, very ratioed, and there were more to come. There are other tweets attacking Sophia authors later. Let me read my statement for you and give you the full context of that history, because that has everything to do with why Ask Your Husband is at the very moment unable to be, or maybe it could still be purchased in hardcover, but it's not able to be purchased on TAN. It's not able to be purchased as its Kindle edition, and it might not be able to be purchased in its hardcover. Go check it if you haven't gotten the book. This is a letter, by the way, that I released to J.D. Flynn of The Pillar, right? So not a site friendly to ours, but I released this today. It'll probably come up later today because this thing has become such a train wreck. And you see how 13 months ago I tried to dodge, and people that know the inside story gave me high marks. They were like, wow, you told the truth and you were just not sitting on it. You're saying everyone's a good guy. So here's the full story. Okay, so bear in mind what I just played for you about how I tried to keep the private to the utmost extent that I could. Here it is. Until my brother David got himself kicked off of Sophia Institute Press after their multiple patient and year-long warnings for needlessly incendiary tweets, he and I had been co-authors on a book called No Christian Feminism. Co-authors on this book. The writing and editing process of No Christian Feminism overlapped with the writing and editing process of my wife, Steph's book, Ask Your Husband. You guys know Steph, but the Pillar readers are not big consumers of our content. So of my wife, Steph's book, Ask Your Husband, which was being written by special request of TAN's late great acquisitions editor, John Morehouse. He literally requested that she write this book, specifically as TAN's female companion piece to Dave's and my male-themed Sophia book. And he said, only write this book if you call it Ask Your Husband, because that was Steph's Twitter handle at the time. He said, that's what makes the whole book. It's going to be great. God repose John Morehouse, such a great man. We love him. All the people at TAN love him. Plus, in addition to the fact that we were co-authors, Dave and his family were living in extremely close quarters with my family at that point. This meant that in essence, you had 3 authors writing 2 companion books on the same topic, practically all under one roof. Feminism, as you can imagine, was basically all we talked about in those days.
And still in these days.
And still in these days, yeah. And that's what we'll be doing.
And this past week.
in the past week.
Forevermore.
Now the feminists have shown up and they are named opponents, like Abigail Favale, right? All that changed when Sophia canceled No Christian Feminism in late February of last year. Bear in mind, I came to you with a podcast March the 17th, after I let the dust settle. You see, one thing that's consistent to me is I try to let the dust settle. Don't let the private be public. It's mortifying if you do so, and this is just, it's unnecessary and it's really bad. So I came to you, I think 2.5, 3 weeks after Sophia had, through no fault of excellent, goodly Charlie McKinney's, canceling the book on February the 24th. I waited a little bit of time for the dust to settle, and it worked out very well. I ended up going back with Sophia. Understandably so, did Sophia cancel. Sophia's goodly, long-suffering, and eminently fair boss, Charlie McKinney, had humored my pleadings on Dave's behalf for well over a year, since December 2019, during which time Sophia had agreed to solve the problem of Dave's Twitter rants by shelving our book, No Christian Feminism, for a full year, a full calendar year, all of COVID 2020. And then, by their promise, later publishing it, if he would shut up, on conditions that his rants stop. That didn't mean he couldn't come on my show, or by the way, or at the time it was a show we did together, which has lots to do with this. Okay, so I said on condition that his rants stop, which they did, ... until they began again. Incidentally, I'm not going to talk about this much, but you guys, any of you who are on Twitter, witnessed the kind of beginning of them again between December 2019 and April 2020. Something really, really major happened in April. It was on Easter, on a little bit after April the 6th that year. Dave and Taylor Marshall started going at it over the SSPX, and it was Dave that had fired the first shot. Taylor's a Sophia author, so Sophia couldn't have liked that. I didn't have a specific conversation with that, but when he was supposed to be quiet, remember, when you're on someone's publication house, two authors, think of this. You're on someone's publication, you're all on a team. So one author attacking another under the same heading, under the same imprint, that's really bad. And that was while he was supposed to be under this year-long gag order. And there were others. So he stopped from December to March or so, and then the ranting tweets began again. I just don't know what else to say about this. And you see how I didn't talk about it without covering it up 13 months ago, but Dave, I'm afraid, has forced the issue here. Totally just mortifying. Just mortifying.
People are wondering what they don't really understand, like why we're addressing it.
No, I'm getting there. No, this kind of thing can't be rushed, people. We gotta develop the full thing. So, Steph had completed writing, but not yet editing, her book, Ask Your Husband, roughly 2 weeks prior to Sophia's cancellation of Dave's book with my book, before it got severed. No Christian Feminism, on February the 24th, 2021. That's when we got canceled. Because of Dave, unequivocally, Sophia said sorry. And Steph had, with my full and legal permission, now we're coming to the issue, during this time when she wrote the book, which she wrote the entire thing prior to the severance, she had my permission to copy-paste a few of our citations into a subsection of her 5th chapter. It's about 40% of the latter 40% of her chapter 5. Her book is a Pauline kind of woman instructing other women. Listen to your husbands. You're not hearing this from any other female authors. Any of the female authors in Christendom, aside from some Protestants, none in Catholicism, who say, I'm an anti-feminist. You don't hear it from any of them. Look, one of the major problems with the world is listen to your husband. That's mainly what her book is about. You'll be able to buy it again soon. But the 5th chapter, she's like, can I borrow some of your guys' citations? Because your whole book is about magisterium, the patristics, scholastics like Thomas, the scriptural citations, the recent magisterium beginning with John Paul II. So can I borrow some of these? And I said, sure. And I was co-copywriter, joint and several, indivisible right between co-copywriters. So I said, sure. Now, during the editing process of of my book, which was back on Sophia, which happened shortly after that video I recorded, in March of 2021. Well, 6 months later, in late 2021, Steph realized that Dave's departure from Sophia and the ensuing severance of his chapters into a 3rd feminism book, yet another Gordon feminism book. Mine became Case for Patriarchy, of course. His would retain the title No Christian Feminism. We let him keep that. This meant that she should, as a professional courtesy, redact, where possible, sources from her work which she approximated, note that word, approximated, she would not otherwise have known without Dave. You know, I think I got this source from Dave. I think I got this source from Dave. This one I'm sure I did. This one I'm sure I did. Because unlike either Steph or me, Dave actually has studied theology. I studied a great deal of Thomistic philosophy. She studied neither. So there are 3 big points buried here. You know, you guys are just, this stuff is concerned with all kind of legal entanglement and ugliness. So that's why I'm developing it here. Here's the first big point. I chose the word approximated. Steph approximated she would not have otherwise known certain citations. Now that she's going back and like picking nits out of her work. What would I not have known if not for Dave? She approximated this, and I say this word because an author who studied a topic carefully enough to write a book cannot later with much certainty say how or who or why directed them to most of their sources, except for the very most noteworthy ones, that which some of these sources stuck out to Steph as like, oh, I definitely got this source from Dave. And we're just talking about citations here, citations and research. But Ephesians chapter 5, for example, verses 21 through 24, everyone knows this. This has everything to do with feminism, right? And they bracket it in the Catholic Missal at Mass. Most Novus Ordo churches do. So everyone knows Ephesians 5. They won't read this. Wives, you need to submit to your husbands the way the church submits to Christ. We're talking about citations like that. There are only 8 or 9 of them in the Bible that are really relevant. Steph's like, no, I'm not going to take that out. I don't know where I first heard about it. But even if I copy pasted from Tim and Dave's manuscript, a citation from Ephesians 5, just citations now, I'm not going to take it out, right? Because I would have known about that, or I probably did know about it anyway. Okay, big point number 2. Steph did nevertheless, in October the 6th email to Tan, direct them to do 2 things, okay? Now, Tan is the publisher of Ask Your Husband. Here's her email shown on the screen. I want you guys to see this. She directed them, please, to remove the sources most specifically attributable to Dave that she could think of then. Like I just said, this redaction would not include all scriptural or papal or obvious Thomistic sources, because I know those super well, which she either would have found or did in fact find through what she did 4 full days of her own research, pouring through dozens of papal encyclicals. 4 days. It was basically all of a week, as I remember it, as the kids were working in the schoolroom. She was going through papal encyclicals. So, they're obvious ones: Rerum Novarum, Casti Canubi, Quadragesimo Anno, etc. These are the big obvious ones. There are only a dozen, at most a dozen and a half, that everyone who writes about Christian feminism from a Catholic perspective knows about. So she didn't take those out, but she did redact, or she did in this email that's up on the screen, say, hey, Tan, please redact these couple of citations and the commentary that was uniquely Steph's, because I remember very specifically this lady, Silvana Vecchio. I would not have known about this from Dave, except through Dave. He was really excited about it. And also in this email, as you can read, she ordered them here, now that she caught the error, to add in a footnote on page 169 of her book, which it's there. You can go check your book. You want to put that up, Steph? Accrediting Dave's, as well as my own research and citations, although, of course, both of us are named separately. We're very glad now that she named Dave and she named me. Here's what Steph said. You can read it yourself. For this citation number 39 on page 169, for this citation and a handful of others in this chapter, I'm indebted to the early research of my husband and his brother in an early draft of what became my husband's book, The Case for Patriarchy, which did become my book, through the grace of God, and also what will in the future become my brother-in-law's book, now just a manuscript, No Christian Feminism. Okay, so the latter made it into the book, but by what turns out to be, I can't believe I'm saying this, but what turns out to be a harmless oversight by Tam, which is fine. These things do happen. They didn't pull out the redaction she ordered, but it's totally harmless because over the last 10 days, we have secured our old attorney, Paul Jana, and he went to several IP attorneys, intellectual property, which no other lawyers know much about. And, the IP attorney gave us a letter saying, we checked out this exact fact pattern. It's totally fine. So Tan didn't have to pull out Steph's suggested redactions, even though that was a professional courtesy to Dave. The Vecchio quote, for instance, he definitely found it. Good job finding it, for what it's worth. You want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I think a lot of people might be wondering what's going on. Basically, like Dave has accused me of plagiarism, even though I cited him here and in all of my interviews. And apparently a 28-page document, which we actually have a hold of and looked at, and a lot of it's really laughable, was going around. And our IP attorneys looked at all of this, my manuscript, their manuscript, and they came out with the evidence that this is a nothing burger.
Well, I'll read that to you right now. That's the third biggest and most important point that the intellectual property attorneys came back with, which is a slam dunk. And by the way, this is why we were hoping initially, before the story got weirder and weirder, we were hoping to continue to publish Ask Your Husband with Tan. The weirder it got, the less realistic it was for us to expect them to publish it. The story continues. But here's the third important point. Most important of all, as our legal research of the past week turns out, in intellectual property, I have a JD. No one knows anything about intellectual property aside from intellectual property lawyers. The fact that Tan didn't accomplish the former, pulling out the redacted citations, but did accomplish the latter, where Steph actually accredited Dave's research and citations, is certainly not a legal fault by Tan or by Steph. So we kind of did our old friends at Tan a favor by paying for all this legal research over the last 10 days. It's been very expensive. And we got a slam dunk or state of black letter law in America that's absolutely binding, which just says this is, there's no question this is not actionable copyright infringement. Neither Tan nor Steph, that means, erred by the fact that Steph suggested citational redactions to Tan that accidentally got left in. No big deal. It's not a legal error. It was an imperfected courtesy, meaning Steph had the idea, but it didn't end up happening. Not legally required in such situations, even though Steph tried to perfect it. According to the ruling law cited by our lawyer's contact an intellectual property attorney, we paid to research the issue and write a legal letter below. I'm going to cite from that now. Yeah, go ahead, Steffi.
The other thing I'd like to say about that is, listen, when you get accused of something like I did, I tried to do the right thing, and that is that I used my own funds and money to have this investigated by a third party. So Dave thinks I took his citations and I did it in a really, bad way, even though I've cited him in my footnote, you can see, and every interview I did, I gave him credit. So I thought, okay, how about this? I'll just pay the money and have an attorney look at this as an objective third party. And I'm really happy that I did that, because what they found was really just a slam dunk.
Yeah. You have to understand what fresh hell we've been through over the last 10 days. So here are 6 points from the attorney's letter. Most of them are points of the current up-to-date American black letter law on cases exactly like ours. Believe it or not, there's nothing new under the sun. 2 brothers who are authoring a book with one of their wives is authoring a similar book, and they share, both of us share the copyright, so I had the right to share it with her when she was writing it. But during editing, someone goofs up and or not, and fails to pull out some citations. Is this actionable copyright infringement? No. Here's 6 points. The law views borrowed citations as something called factual compilations. And quote, this is a quote from a Ninth Circuit case, such compilations of factual information receive only limited protection, a case called Experian Info. When dealing with factual compilations, infringement cannot be based on a showing that only a part of the work has been copied. It's a high showing. You have to show that it's identical. This is also from Experian. What I added, beginning with the word "what," was my commentary. I'll leave my commentary off for now. Direct quote, there can be no infringement unless the works are virtually identical. That's Experian, quoting a case called Harper House, Inc. versus Thomas Nelson. 4th point, substantial verbatim copying in the infringing work is necessary. This is my attorney's analysis of Experian. That's directly from him. Number 5, match rates, meaning the matching, the rates of how many citations did she use, how many citations did he use? Because we're not talking about work, we're talking about citations. Match rates as high as 80%. Right? There are 100 citations in a guy's chapter, and someone lifts 80 of them. It just boom, 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 boom. Have been held insufficient. 80% is not enough to establish copyright infringement of factual compilations. That's our attorney's analysis of this Experian case. And here, this is our attorney's analysis in the letter. He says, here, the extent of any similarities between Stephanie's selected quotes and bibliographic footnotes come nowhere near the level of overlap required for infringement of any copyright David may own in his factual compilation. So this is from our attorney's analysis. In sum, let's say this. All of this over the past 10 days has provided a scary moment or moments for Steph, initially. But an ultimately relieving one when she discovered that she was, quote, this comes directly from a case, Experian, but our attorney is applying it to her facts. She was free to use the facts contained in David's compilation when preparing her competing work, as long as her competing work does not exhibit the same selection or arrangement, which it does not. Because clearly, she borrowed 17 citations, though the one was really uniquely his. The other ones were all huge major stuff. Popes. Famous papal writings that she found on her own. Doesn't mean they weren't copy-pasted from hers, because she had full permission to do that, which is why there's matching. Is it MLA or is it Chicago style? I'm going to talk about this in a second. There were indicia that this had been copy-pasted 100%, right? This is a learning moment for a first-time author. Probably don't copy-paste. You young authors out there, don't even copy-paste citations that you get from the internet. Because why? Sometimes there are hard brackets that are not part of the citation, but part of analysis. Sometimes
Note
there
to
is...
handwrite all citations, or your brother-in-law will freak out.
I've done this for years. I did this in undergrad for years, and a professor caught me and said, don't, I know everyone does it. You copy and paste citations from either the internet or if you're borrowing someone else's citations, which is common practice. Everyone does it. Don't do it. Or, usually it's not going to backfire as much as it did here, because this is just weird. This is man bites dog, not dog bites man. I'm going to tell you the rest of it now because there's no way to escape telling you. But you see, I've been trying to keep this quiet for a while, without lying to you. Just, it's private. Okay, so Tan's understandable editorial oversight, minor oversight, is not a legal thing, right? According to this information we learned, it amounted to no cause of action by Dave against either Steph or Tan. right? And I gave you both perspectives here. She tried to cure the citational overlap that's something other than a pope or the Bible or Augustine or Thomas, because that's really not obscure. She tried to cure it, but that was a professional courtesy. The fact that her attempted cure failed is nowhere near copyright infringement. And plagiarism is a whole different thing. Plagiarism's risible, and it's not even really an action. It's a whole different thing. The attorneys were just laughing at plagiarism. These are citations. You might not know, but if you take 100 out of 100 citations from someone else in very similar or identical order, 100 out of 100, that could be a copyright citation. Copyright violation's a little, it's less sexy. It's more technical. It's a copyright strike. You got to watch out if you make YouTube videos. Sometimes you have music in the background. It's different from plagiarism. She cited Dave, so there's no plagiarism. And she, aside from the square brackets that were included with accidentally some of Dave's words in citations, just 7 words total or something. There's none of his analysis. It's just literally citations. If you take 100 out of 100, that could be a copyright strike, but it wasn't here. Steph barely took any of them, and they were all super big ones like the Bible or Pope John Paul II on feminism. He's the foil to the Christian anti-feminist because he tried to make Christian feminism a thing. Okay, so everyone's going to be using the same Ephesians 5, Pope John Paul II, Laborum Exercens, things like that. Okay, just if you're a young writer out there, these things are, I guess, really important to know, or your whole world can get robe-loaded, like a robot that explodes. As I promised a week ago, now back to the point, a version of Ask Your Husband incorporating Steph's attempted October the 6th redactions will again be available for internet purchase in a small matter of weeks. And we think we can get this really fast. We expect this important work's voluminous sales to continue at that time, probably to spike, okay? Probably to double. This thing was on its path to being a bestseller. How many copies it had sold? It was selling fast, and it's going to start selling fast again. I think you might be able to still go get it, but I'm not sure. Now for the tough part. Okay. All of the heartache, headache, hassle, and legal drama that we've spent over the last 10 days stems from the simple and yet perplexing fact that after David was let go by Sophia on February the 24th, 2021, in what can only amount to a prolonged irrational fit lasting to, I guess, today, he blamed 2 innocent parties for his release from Sophia. Me, who had gone to bat for him for over a year, was begging sweet Charlie McKinney, who was too long-suffering, not to cut Dave off, and Charlie usually granted it. And I'd originally brought him into my 3-book Sophia publishing contract. Dave didn't have one of his own. He begged me to make the feminism book, which was going to be the 3rd book in my publishing contract, the 2nd book after Catholic Republic. He begged me to. I'm like, well, I was going to do it 3rd. Okay, fine. And of course, the other innocent party is Sophia Institute Press, rather than, he blamed both of us, me and Sophia, rather than himself, for being warned several times, starting several needless battles, unforced errors on Twitter. I hope those 18 tweets were worth it, or tweet likes, 21 tweet likes, whatever it is. People, get off the Twitter. It's poison to your later life. We've all made mistakes on Twitter, but few have made mistakes this costly or this well-known. More bizarre still, people simply won't believe this. You're just going to have to. You're going to read probably some Pillar piece later today, is that, to my very best recollection, at no time on the day that Sophia severed Dave, over 13 months ago, and we were co-authors, or any time thereafter, he take my calls or call me back. I repeat, to my best recollection, unless there's one breakthrough call, I don't think so. The day that we got severed by email, from Charlie. And Charlie was very nice about it. And he said, look, this is Dave. This isn't Tim. I was just texting. I was coming back from looking at some hunting land, to do some hunting. And I was like, what the heck's going on? I just came back out of the woods, literally. What's going on? No texting back. I started calling him, no calling back. This is my brother. I have not spoken to him on the phone. Now, he's texted back, not particularly helpful things since then, but no call back. And he wasn't texting back for the first week. Steph and I tried calling, texting to get mutual friends and colleagues to mediate the dispute or just to convince him to pick up the phone and return my calls. And he refused every time. This is bizarre because this is where the story becomes just freakish. And this is where, by the way, whereas people are used to me and Steph fighting back, hitting back, or just in this case, not fighting so much, pushing back on, hey, Tan, come on, just publish it. Come on. The reason we're not doing that with Tan anymore, whereas we were at the beginning of the week, is like, come on, just publish it. Just put it back up. We showed you our legal research. Is because it got so weird that even though it's frustrating, right? There's still a little more to it, but even though it's frustrating, it got too weird. It got too man bites dog for anyone, any publisher who was bound up in it originally to want to be bound up in it. So instead of calling me back over the past 13 months, Dave chose to send a profoundly misleading 28-page document falsely alleging plagiarism and copyright infringement, failing to emphasize the key fact that Steph secured legal permission to our citations when she wrote Ask Your Husband. He didn't tell anyone that, right? One or both authors can issue this permission. He sent this document around to media like J.D. Flynn. Do I keep calling him J.D. Vance? J.D. Flynn at The Pillar.
And that's why we're talking about this right now, is because a
We
bunch
would not
of these
be.
articles are about to come out. You guys are about to see a bunch of articles coming out, and that was because Dave contacted these people before he contacted us. And we tried to be quiet for 10 days to try to work this out behind the scenes to no success. So now we have to say something.
Really, if you trace it back to Sophia being canceled, weird calendar overlaps between 2021 and 2022. A year prior, on February the 24th, which is, a similar date, he hasn't contacted me for a year plus a month plus a week. I mean, that's crazy. But here's the weirdest part of it all. You're not even going to believe it. He was sending this 28-page document, falsely alleging plagiarism and copyright infringement, behind our backs, without contacting us, even to feminist opponents of Ask Your Husband. I don't know what to make of that.
Which is confirmed by our lawyer.
Confirmed by our lawyer, confirmed by the feminist herself. No one knows what to make of it. It's a stupid story, right? People have been trying to intervene, like, Dave, why won't you pick up your brother's call? I was speaking to Charlie and my editor at Sophia, and he's like, oh, this was 6 months ago. He's like, oh, he said something to the effect of, you're not talking to Dave. And I was like, no, I want to though. And he's like, oh, that's good. You want to, why don't you? And I was like, well, he's not talking to me. And he's like, what? After he busted your contract? After he got you in trouble with us originally, he's not talking to you. That people can't make heads or tails of this. I don't understand. It's truly, truly bizarre behavior. And yeah, just no contact and lots of attempts by myself, even though we've done nothing wrong. Okay. But don't copy and paste footnote citations. Not that that's a plagiarism, not that it's a copyright infringement, because it's not. I now know, because I have had my head in the research for the last 10 days, reading lawyers' letters, firing them off, paying for all of this, which is expensive. So Tan doesn't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about it from that perspective. But now we're gonna be, to the extent that we can, amicably parting ways with Tan and just just going off the grid for a little bit. But hey, I'm gonna be back making shows. With family like this, who needs enemies, right? This is. I love my brother dearly, and we'll move on forward with minimal comment. But it's as weird to me as you, and I don't have a lot more info because, like I say, he blamed everyone. I think Church Militant took all of his bizarre rantings from March of 2021 down. They were very embarrassed by that against Sophia. I tried to defend Charlie and say everyone's a good guy here. So you see how I'm trying to paper over. I don't, and even the stuff with, I was in the hospital days after, bedside. I was the only parent allowed to be in there, one at a time. Bedside with Abby, with a swollen face. She'd just had a huge brain surgery, her biggest brain surgery yet. Literally, what's it called? Hemispherectomy. That was, you guys know, you prayed for us. It was days after that, on Easter 2020, when he was supposed to be under a gag order to get our book, No Christian Feminism, published. He just started this firefight with Marshall, and people are like, hey, he's got your same last name. Now, I think, to be fair, I think ultimately, as I've said, and I said at the time, I think ultimately his point was right, but I'm like, why didn't you take this to me? And I can take it to Taylor. Me and Taylor were obviously partners for a long time. All of this stuff goes back in large, almost total. I mean, I'm tempted to say total, but in very large part to Dave. Never say total, because then there'll be some small thing. I was defending him, got in the mix. So all of this goes back to Dave, me, Taylor Marshall, Sophia Institute, now Tan. It's just, it's all coming back to just jumping into fights. And it's really bad. And I've been saying, hey, I'm getting off Twitter as much as I possibly can, even before this happened. Now, let me read these points from Steph. First off, regarding Abigail Favale, who wrote the critique of her on Catholic World Report, I just say, what kind of Christian uses someone's personal family drama against them, feeling vindicated by someone's personal family drama? It's just horrible. This stuff is making me sick.
Like, honestly,
because they disagree with their book thesis.
First off, I don't have anything animosity towards her. I don't know why she holds so much towards me. I know she doesn't like my book very much, but if somebody's family member contacted me and let's say I had some problem with them, it would never occur to me to try to use that against them in public. That is vile. It's disgusting. Well, it's disgusting that Dave did that in general, which is just heartbreaking for so many reasons. But the fact that there are other people out there right now, guys, who are writing articles and just lapping this up, that Dave is clearly upset.
Joyfully saying, a little bird told me. A little bird turned out to be a...
It's disgusting.
Sorry, were you done? I was just trying to say that was the little bird tweet. Happy, just thrilled. It's bad. But I mean, look, Steph touched a third rail. I was talking to Charlie the other day and I'm like, dude, you're a mensch. You're a Chad. After all of the drama, almost as much drama with No Christian Feminism in the works, eventuating with Dave being severed from that and him taking his manuscript wherever. Charlie was like, let's take your 4 chapters, Tim. You write 2 new ones. We're going to publish that book. That's a mensch. That is an awesome publisher, Sophia. I mean, just now you know the full story. You should buy a Sophia book today. I'm sure. Buy Catholic Republic. Buy The Case for Patriarchy. Heck, why am I forgetting about that? That's at the center of all of this. So that's really that's a novel thing. But what was I saying? I was saying something else.
The Favale thing.
What the hell? No, that was 2 points ago. He's saying, yeah, so with regard to Sophia, I mean, just congratulate them. You know the full story, and buy a book, because that's really admirable. But I was like, Charlie, that's funny. This goes back that far, and it's still bound up with the facts here. Here's a 3-book deal, and Dave got dealt in and then dealt out, and he's still angry about it. I had some thought. It's gone now. Yeah, we love Dave. We've always been good and kind to him, and that's even reflected professionally. Okay, this is from Steph. She said, she's right here. Do you want to read it off screen? Because it'll sound better with your voice rather than mine.
Yeah, guys, I'm in an 8th month of a very high-risk pregnancy, so I've been trying to kind of stay off of this. This has all just been obviously very, very hard to have a family member betray you like this so publicly, and has not even attempted to try to contact me. So I just want to leave it at this is all I have to say about it, because I know articles are coming out. And this is really honestly the reason why we're coming out about this right now, is because all these things are about to break in the media, and we just wanted to talk about it first, and try to clear my name. But this is what I'll leave everybody with. I want to sincerely thank everyone who contacted me detailing how much Ask Your Husband has changed their lives for the better. That is truly the sole reason why I agreed to write this book for TAN, and why I will not be deterred in putting it back up for publication within a few weeks. On a personal note, I never fathomed I'd have to discuss our family issues so publicly. Tim and I had tried to remain quiet for 10 days, hoping that we could resolve this privately behind the scenes. And despite our many attempts to solve this behind closed doors, and failing to hear back from Dave after so many calls and texts and asking friends to mediate for us, I'll just have to say this. Tim and I are just as dumbfounded by Dave's public actions against us as most of you probably are. He never once contacted us before deciding to go on a very public warpath against me, and working hand in hand, and by working with hand in hand with those who are hostile to traditional Catholic values. I guess he's contacting media outlets that are notorious for not liking us. Those who know Dave personally find this exact fact to be perhaps the most unsettling. Incidentally, I just want to say this to Dave personally. If he had tried to contact me once, I would have humbly heard his concerns, and I would have diligently worked with him to find a mutual solution, even though I was allowed to use those citations legally, and I had permission from Tim, who was co-author on the book. I didn't want to hurt my brother-in-law. I would never have tried to strip him from credit, which is why I actually gave him the footnote that you guys see on the screen in my actual book, and in every single one of the interviews I've given, I gave Dave credit. But even after all he has done to us this past week, I do want him to know that. I never imagined the diabolical attacks surrounding the publication of Ask Your Husband would take the form that it has. Some things still surprise. I have known and loved Dave like a brother since he was 14 years old. With all that has happened to us this past week, Tim and I continue to love Dave. What's more, we will continue to hope that Christ will guide him to a private reconciliation to those that he has wrongly perceived to be his enemies, and who in fact love him.
All right. Well, so I mean, let's get it back on the light here. The C'est la vie. This is the realm of shadows, right? This is the realm where Satan lives. So I say, like G.K. Chesterton, it's hard to be light. It's easy to be heavy. C'est la vie. The world is weird now. Me and my co-author, Dr. Michael Robillard, who that's going to be a great co-authorship. Don't go to college. We always joke. In the olden days, before stuff got really weird in the world, in the last decade, you'd say good times to end a conversation. About 5 years ago, you'd start saying weird times. And now to end a conversation, when you're slapping your knees, you say, and you're getting up, you say end times. It's just, the world's on fire. Stuff is crazy. All you can do is do your best. Love your wife, hug your kids, go to church, keep the sacraments, go to confession. That probably should have been first. And then laugh. Gallows humor is the way forward, because stuff is weird. And we're literally now, I don't think I have to prove it to you too much more, having played for you just a snippet of that show that seemed really low drama from March 17, 2021. I don't want to have to prove to you guys how, I think skillfully, we were like, look, here's what happened. Where's the No Christian Feminism book? Here's what happened, but it's okay. Everyone can be friends, and I maintained a friendship with all the people at the higher ups at Church Militant, and Charlie McKinney, and Charlie and Michael Voris spoke after David attacked him. And I was like, look, man, everyone's a good guy. I was even saying Dave's a good guy. So we didn't lie. I think we very nicely covered, here's what's going to be happening with the book, spun what's positive out of it. So we don't have to evidence much more. I just wanted to show you, because retrogrades and parish orphans out there are good people. I met a lot of them. And it's a weird form of trust, being like, I have a good listenership, I have a good viewership to bring you guys in. But I do just want to point out, like, okay, look at our track record here. Look how much we kept that quiet. Look how much I kept quiet even the stuff with Taylor Marshall. When Dave was still on making videos with me on this channel, I'm like, oh no, what now? As Charlie would say, oh no, what now? I'd say, oh no, what now with Dave. So it just can't go much further. He sent the 28-page document to hostiles. I mean, not in the sense of enemy combatants, but in the sense of hostiles to tradition. And so I think that the Pillar's going to be running something later today. So it'll be catastrophic, but it's not a big deal. I mean, it's just the Pillar. And actually, I read you what I wrote there. It's just, I mean, other people get twisted off of it. We're onward and upward. It actually has been a tough week. I'm not flexing. And it's been the longest time, 10 days, since I went without making one video. That's the longest stretch I think I've ever done. Since I started this. So we care, but it's onward and upward now. And just please don't ask me personally, oh, what's the deal with Dave? Because literally I don't even know. Not only is it private, but I don't even know. I'm just trying to ask folks out there to pretend for one iota of a second that I am as perplexed by his behavior as you are. And that doesn't sound very plausible, but then again, it's not very plausible. I'm talking to my buddy, Dr. Michael Robillard. I said this to him on the phone the other day. What if something, anything, not even a catastrophe like we get canceled, but or we get pushed, canceled in the sense of what Sophia did to Dave. I'm not condemning Sophia, but we get pushed off. Our contract or some major snafu happens. How bizarre would it be not to text or call, like right away? Right? Dave just went AWOL 13 months ago when they blamed him. He knew he'd stepped in it. They blamed him, and I wasn't going to shame him that much. I would have probably yelled at him for 5 minutes, but I mean, I said this to Michael. I'm like, we're co-authors. We text each other every day, especially during the editing process. Our book, Don't Go to College, is going to be a big kind of phenomenon, I think, with what it hopes to create on college campuses. How bizarre would it be if something bad happened with a book, even a little bad, and we didn't contact each other? So that's the magnitude of the strangeness. So I'm not going to talk about it anymore going forward. It's basically too many facts, you guys know, though. Retrogrades and parish orphans are good people. I know, because I meet them. It's not the biggest audience on the internet, but it is the best. And I mean that sincerely. So,
and I think most people understand, because everybody has family, that these things happen in family. It's just that most people don't have their family members betraying them in public. So I think most people actually get some of the suffering that we're going through. We're just asking everybody to understand that it's been a rough week. And the reason we're coming out now and talking about this is because after being silent for so long, we tried to work it out and we weren't able to. And now that Dave's contacted media before contacting us, we had to address some of the things we know they're going to try to say about us.
Yeah. That closing note. We ain't melodramatic. Look how much we kept all this quiet as long as possible. That was the conversation I had with Charlie McKinney. I was like, didn't you kind of think a lot of this hellstorm was going to fly at us, Charlie, with the case for patriarchy on Sophia? I asked him this a couple days ago, and he was like, yeah, I thought what you're getting, this hellstorm, which is, it's because the topic's crazy. I mean, it is the subversive leftism beneath all the other subversive leftisms. And you, in your book, and Steph in her book, just took it on straight on. He's like, I thought you were going to get that with Case for Patriarchy, but it wasn't selling at the same high rate as Steph's, and I didn't catch such hell for it. Steph did, because think of what happens when you touch the third rail. I'm connecting all the the big things here. I'm talking about the spiritual combat. And I'm not one of these guys that sees spiritual combat demons under every rock. If I stub my toe, it's probably just the rock. But here, I warned you guys. Believe it or not, I don't have the compunction to say I'm the least dramatic guy on the internet. But I call this stuff. I was like, it's going to be really bad. There's going to be this attack because you can talk about the homosexual agenda. You have to understand, folks. You can talk about the homosexual agenda and some like moderates, centrists will be like, oh, you're going there. It's like every conservative pretty much agrees. You could talk about transsexualism. Even a bunch of leftists who aren't woke leftists will agree with you. These aren't controversial by our standards, by Gordon's standards at all. You make a real book against feminism. I'm not talking about one of these Catholic books against feminism that talks about, it's okay for women to work or anything like that. I'm talking about real feminism, about the real meaning of Ephesians 5, wifely submission, being a best friend and, the head to the body. I'm talking about working. You touch that third rail and everyone from every direction will be coming at you. So please just acknowledge in closing here how crazy it is. We all read conservative books. I have a shelf full of them. And none of the conservative books on the shelf does the equivalent of what Steph's book, Ask Your Husband, does. Because this is what Charlie and I concluded at the end of that talk. I ultimately didn't catch the hell because I'm a man. But Steph is the sellout, right, to the feminist cause. She's the woman giving away all the secrets. So this book will be back up for purchase for those of you who had not yet got it. We'll talk about it when it is. It should be soon. At the very least, it'll come through our site, and we will make this happen soon. It will have those key redactions that she originally intended, but again, no big deal to either Tan or to us. After all of this hell of the last 10 days, no big legal deal anyway, because that was just a professional courtesy not required by the law for either Tan or for us. So no one's in trouble. It just feels like it. And one man ought to be. God bless you all. And do pray for us.